Hi guys, Geoffrey here, and welcome to another interview. And this time we have another couples interview, like last week again. And I'm gonna try to do more of these interviews because they seem very authentic, very genuine, and you also get to see how these principles apply to your partner and how they're taking it, how they're seeing it as well. And also, as you can hear from my voice and Elsha and Lawrence's voice as well, this is the most fun I've had in a long time. In this interview, there's going to be some crying, some tears, some laughing, some very genuine emotions coming from a couple who have been through it all, who have been through the worst of it, and now experiencing the bliss of what it's like to create a very thriving relationship. So to set the stage for how things were like in the beginning. So Lawrence joined alone. And when he joined, the relationship was a bit hopeless. There was even another person in the picture. And we're going to talk very deeply about that. They tried therapy and nothing seems to be working. And so they've tried everything here, but nothing seemed to work. And so if the best help doesn't work, they felt very, very hopeless. And I also want you to see just the dynamic they have when talking to each other and how none of these stuff is really fake. Their love for each other, their reconciliation, and their thriving state of the relationship is really genuine. And I think you can feel that from how they talk. And so how do they get from here, from very dire to here to where they are today? We're going to talk about a few things. Number one, we're going to talk about the differences between toxic and healthy masculinity. The line between the two is not always very clear. And I think with the rise of a lot of people like Andrew Tate, for example, and a lot of dating coaches here and there, we can often fall into the toxic masculine realm without even knowing it. So we're going to talk about that. Number two, we're going to talk about why affairs are not always black and white. And this can be very, very controversial, I understand, but have an open mind here because I think you're going to learn something quite mind-blowing in this part. Number three, we're going to talk about why you can actually change people. So there's a saying that goes around that you can't change people, and that's just not true. And we're going to talk about a different paradigm you need to have to understand how you can have the skill to actually change other people for the better. Number four, we're going to talk about reviving sexual passion. So we don't usually talk about this in a lot of our interviews because this is pretty high up there, meaning that it's the last thing that people should think about when it comes to relationships. And it's a thing that will come naturally when you build the lower pillars. We're going to talk about some things in sexual passion here if you're struggling with that as well. And to end, we're going to talk about some honest experiences that they had in the program and some very, very key nuggets of advice that they have for all you guys who are currently in a struggling relationship. So this is definitely one you don't want to miss. But with that said, I'll just stop talking right now and just get on with the interview. Hey guys, Geoffrey here again. And today I have Lawrence and Elsha. She's named after her dad's favorite cologne, it seems like. That's not here. So in this case, Lawrence, you were the one who actually joined the program. But Elsha, I'm assuming you know quite a lot about the program as well by osmosis of what Lawrence talked about, what he's doing, etc. So I thought it'd be interesting to get the both of them together and talk about kind of how things were in the beginning and how things were now, things are now, and how and the things that got them to where they are today, I guess. So if you could start off, Lawrence and Elsha, about Lawrence, when you first met me, and Elsha, in that beginning point, what were things like? What were the key issues, the key problems like?
You want me to go? Okay. So from my perspective, and I'm probably wrong with a lot of these facts because it was a little while ago, but from my perspective, communication was just really bad. And for me personally, I was very needy. I got offended very easily about things. I always felt like I had to be right about everything. And if I wasn't right, I was like, well, this conversation's stupid, so whatever.
It's interesting how even when you are describing the events of the past right now, you kind of hedge it by saying, like, I don't know, maybe I have this wrong. So even that change is so natural now, but that was interesting, but keep going. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, that's good. But yeah, I just remember very vividly, almost every night we would put the kids to bed and then we would both be on our phones doing our own thing. And that's why I say like the communication wasn't there. And it just felt like, I don't want to say a cold relationship, but it felt more like roommates. rather than, you know, a loving and caring marriage.
Yeah. Elsha, would you say that's kind of the same interpretation and narrative that you had at that point in time?
Yeah, a little bit. I'd say I was good at communicating.
Really good.
He just wasn't good at taking it
No.
all the time. So most of the time. But for me, I just wasn't happy. And so it probably came off as like, I don't want to do anything with you or interact with you as much as before.
Yeah. And I don't want to, put words in your mouths here, but in our program, and I think looking at a lot of relationships, I think the part that makes people the most unhappy, and Elsha, correct me if I'm wrong here, right, is that catch-22 that we feel, right? So obviously you went into the relationship with Lawrence because you want to work things out. You know that problems are going to come, but when those problems come, it's not really the problems itself that bothers you, because you're supposed to communicate about it, you're supposed to work through it, but it's the fact that whenever you bring up those problems or those issues, what you actually feel, it doesn't get received very well. One, it doesn't lead to anywhere. You don't feel understood. You don't feel validated. You don't feel like you were rewarded for even sharing. In fact, I bet, like, my partner used to say this a lot to me: I regret even telling you that. I regret even speaking to you about that stuff. I regret even being honest with you about some things. Was that kind of how you felt as well, where that made you feel like, what's the point of even talking? And so then you defaulted to, let me just be on my phone. Let me just suppress things. Let me just sweep things under the rug because that's the best thing we can do right now.
A little bit. I mean, probably more on his side. Even if it's good or bad, I always want to talk about it. And I mean, like half the time, like probably our bigger problem, I would try to fix it on my own and not really try to talk to him about it. But if it was just other things and I knew he wouldn't like to hear it, I'm like, I'm gonna tell you anyway, because
yeah. But it's interesting you said like you ended up like trying to fix things on your own. Go ahead, sorry.
Our kids are just screaming.
Oh, okay. No worries. But it's interesting that Elsha said like she was trying to fix things on her own, because I think we start to see that as a bad thing as well, where if your partner is resorting to fixing things on your own, that's a sign that there's major safety issues there, where she doesn't want to work things with you, because you should be a team. There should be a teamwork here. And Lawrence, I think from hearing your story too, I think there was a lot of denial on your side too about the fact that the problems even exist, right?
Absolutely.
What were you telling yourself to keep yourself oblivious to that this is going downhill fast?
Oh man, yeah, like and I think you say this a lot with members of the program, or members of the program have said this, where they're like, it just came out of nowhere. And suddenly she's telling me like, she doesn't love me. Where did this come from? Yeah, I think I was so, what is the word? What's the word where you can't handle the truth? You know what I mean? Like, I could not handle the truth. Like, she was so open to tell me how I could improve, but before the program, I just could not accept that I was at fault ever. And so I would just deny everything. I would lie about stuff, oh, that's not me, that was this. I would push the blame, and it got to the point for me where I was just like, my default was denial.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like when she eventually said, I'm not in love with you anymore, I was like, what? Who thought this coming? But if I had been open to the signs she was continuously giving me, I would have seen it coming.
Yeah.
I just wasn't.
Elsha, how far gone were you at that point in time when you finally told him, like, I'm very unhappy? Were you far gone? Or like, what was your mind space at that point in time?
I mean, because we had like a few talks. We probably did, this was our third talk about me saying like, I'm not happy in our relationship. And then we would just kind of do like small things to try to fix it. And then we would stop. and then that was it. And then, but it just never really got resolved for me. And so this last time it was like big, like it's been almost 7 years and I'm not happy at all. And
7 years unhappy is a long time. Yeah.
But so when I told him the last time, it was it for me. I didn't want to have to deal with it anymore. I didn't want to have these feelings anymore. But I knew I still loved him. I just didn't love him in a marriage way.
I love you, but I don't really want to start a romantic relationship with you and spend the rest of my life with you. And I don't love you in that way, the same way anymore.
Yeah,
exactly. And as I understand, and feel free to not answer this question if you want to skirt this one. We can cut this part out too. There was a point, Elsha, where you did start to see another person because you were pretty much done with this relationship. I mean, tell me, as much as you want to tell me or tell us, what was going through your head there? What was happening there, etc.
Yeah, that's totally fine to talk about. It was more so kind of like just the first year in our marriage, kind of when I first told him that I wasn't happy, kind of leading up to that, I was realizing that I wasn't happy, and I didn't see anybody, but it would more just like fantasize.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
it was just more fantasizing about like the last person I was with, and then just kind of building off of that. And then this past year, and so that went on for 6 years, just fantasizing. Like when I wasn't happy, I would just, my brain would go to that.
Perfect. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And then so this past year, we would go to the same gym. And so it just kind of, and then at that point, like actually seeing him, and we were good friends, it just kind of became more real to me. It's stupid. It was all in my mind.
It's not stupid. And I want to talk about that as like the first takeaway later on, about how society has really made, married couples who fantasize about other relationships into such a taboo thing that it shouldn't be. It doesn't mean anything. So we'll talk about that later on. But don't feel guilty about anything you're sharing here, because like I think, as Lawrence knows, we're super unjudgmental. I think we have a very different paradigm about relationships and how it's supposed to go. So yeah, don't feel guilty. But you mentioned also that you guys tried things here and there, and I think Lawrence mentioned too that you tried going to therapy as well. Tell me, what was that experience like of you trying to resolve this dying relationship at that point in time through this different means?
I think doing actual therapy helped us a lot, because when I told him this last time, like I wanted a divorce, and I told him that, I was like, the only thing really I'll try is just therapy. And that was just more on like to help him. In my mind, I was done. But it helped. I think the therapy helped me so much more. And then your program helped him a lot more than the therapy.
And I needed the most help, so.
Yeah. So tell me your experience with therapy, Lawrence.
So when we went in, the guy, I honestly kind of felt like it was a waste of money for a little while, because he just kept asking questions. And then Elsha was like, he's just trying to understand our situation. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And then like, if we compare it to your program, he just jumped to the very top, and he's like, let's talk about sex, and pretty much only sex, because that's the issue. But I was taking your program like at the same time, and I was like, no, that's not the issue. but sure, we can talk about it.
But you know what's interesting? And Elsha, you don't know this one, but I had a problem with Lawrence in the beginning, because because like we told him in the program, right? Sex should be last. That's not the problem. But he kept hounding on that. It's like, when are we going to talk about it? When are we going to talk about it? Dude, chill. Relax.
So I found another therapist, and he would let me talk about it.
But I guess let's contrast this to how things are now, because obviously you guys are doing the interview together. I kind of saw your dynamic before you even jumped on the call, and it was sweet how you guys like talk to each other. But tell us how things are like now. Contrast it to how it was before. Like describe the day to day, describe the feelings, describe what's going on now.
For me, I'm not annoyed so much when he comes home. Like, oh, he's home now. What am I gonna do? It's more like, yay, he's home.
Yeah.
But and I feel like because I'll still talk whatever I want to him, and he's a lot better at taking it. Yeah. Not that it's all like bad.
Right.
But
no, but I mean,
easier to talk now.
But I think we shouldn't also skirt the fact that, you know, because for my relationship, right, the first 2-3 years of my relationship was nightmarish for both of us, I think. And I think 7 years in, so 4 years after the whole nightmarish experiences, we're still talking about some of the damages that we've done to each other in those 3 long years. And I'm sure it's happening to you guys too. But I think the difference now is that whenever those things come up, it actually goes somewhere. You guys actually feel progress. You guys actually feel like you're getting somewhere. And I think that makes all the difference. Again, it gets us out of that questioning too, where, yeah, I think we all know that problems happen in relationships, but now we can at least go somewhere and talk about it and express it, etc. That makes all the difference. And Lawrence, describe things now from your side.
And a total flip. Looking back, it was just a steady decline, right? And it was mostly me not just not being able to handle the truth. And then, but since the program, it's like it's sometimes it dips, but it just is a continual rise in communication and in the feelings, the love, and the caring and stuff. And I think for me, it is all about accepting what she is telling me with gratitude.
Yeah.
Like instead of being in denial, being like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that with me, because now I know I can improve. I know exactly what to do. And why wouldn't I want that?
I love that. I love that. And so I want to drive into the first point here. I guess what's the best way for me to drive this one, right? So I want to talk first about Lawrence's notion of toxic masculinity first, and how that really destroys everything in a relationship, and how that makes you an ungrateful person in a sense that whenever you get some critiques, you can't deal with that. Because I think when you look at the archetypes of what a man is supposed to be, they're supposed to be like this James Bond-esque type character who always knows what they're doing, always like super poised, always have all the answers, and then somehow all the women swoon over them. Oh, right. But I think when that happens, when we have that paradigm, whenever Elsha talks to you about how unhappy she is, that gets you defensive very fast, because it tells you like, oh, I'm not a man. I'm not doing well as a man. And so instead of taking it, you deny it. You lie to yourself. You lie to her. You lie to whoever, because you have to, like, you want so bad to be that character. Right? I guess tell me your thinking here, how that manifested in the beginning, and because I think that has a big contribution to how you were in denial in the beginning too.
Yeah, man. I remember it got to a point where she was just like, I just don't want you to like touch me or be around me right now. And I'm like, what? Am I not like sexy? Am I not James Bond?
Yeah,
like
because I think like there's this narrative. I love that, because there's this interesting narrative with like dating coaches, especially, right? How, oh, if you become the suave person, then the woman will suddenly make it easy for you. If your woman is making it hard for you, that means you're doing something wrong. It's like, I don't think that teaches you the right things, right? Because to me, Elsha, you correct me here if I'm wrong, right? My partner told me at that point, it's a big turnoff to be with someone who thinks they're supposed to be perfect, because I'm unhappy right now, and I can't even talk to you about how unhappy I am, right? I can't even point out your flaws. I can't even point out your problems. I just have to take it because of this big ego that you're trying to protect. I mean, was that kind of how you were feeling too at that point in time?
A little bit. I knew like anything.
Hello.
A lot. Not, I mean, it's not like I tell him everything about him is bad and I want to be fixed. That's not how it is. It's just there'd be like things that is more fixable.
You have a specific example?
Well, I mean, it's like it's really small and simple. Like at the gym and stuff, I know technique a lot better than him.
Yeah, it's true.
And so I'll try to help him, and he would just be like, "Yeah, whatever."
Okay, yeah.
You're like, "All right, fine, break your back."
I was so my gosh.
It was just, yeah, just kind of like little things like that.
What's even more embarrassing is sometimes she would say something as a joke. I was so in my head that I couldn't even see like the sarcasm or the joke. I'd be like, well, no, that's not true because, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm joking. Like, can you have a little bit of fun with me? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm fun. Oh man, I couldn't handle anything.
Yeah. So in the program, we tell people like, don't try to be the perfect product. Don't try to be the perfect person. You'll never be. And it's a turnoff in a lot of ways. But try to have the perfect process. And that perfect process includes one, taking feedback, understanding how to process it, understanding what is the thing behind the feedback. Like, what are they actually saying to you? What are they actually telling you? Get your ego aside and do something about it and actually have a conversation about it. So I'm guessing that's still happening now because problems always happen in relationships. I'm sure there's some baggage that you guys are still working on right now. I mean, tell me what else, like what was the big epiphanies you had, Lawrence, that made you go, you know what? Let me start taking feedback better. Let me stop trying to be this fake masculinity thing. And let me actually embody real masculinity and actually build a happy relationship here.
Yeah. So it all started, oh man, I'm trying to pinpoint the exact part in the program. But at one point, I remember you saying like,
Emmett, don't put that up his nose.
Sorry. I remember at one point you were like, you should be grateful that she's being open with you about anything. Because there are so many relationships where your partner could completely shut down and just not tell you anything. And next thing you know, she's gone. So the fact that she's willing to say anything speaks volumes. And so I was like, okay, instead of being defensive, be grateful. So that was the huge, that like totally changed absolutely everything, and everything built on gratitude. After that, it was like, after being grateful, it's like, be honest, especially to myself. And, you know, which I think is the complete opposite of that toxic masculinity. Is, you know, be honest that I have faults, that I have flaws, and that I'm not perfect. And this is actually a really good thing that she's telling me.
Yeah. So let's talk about that second point, which is about dealing with, you know, difficult truths, difficult realities of relationships, of things that your partner is saying, and vice versa to you too, Elsha. I think, you know, a lot of people who are going through difficult times in a relationship, they've gone through this negative feedback loop for so long where both people usually have so much baggage. Both people are kind of checked out, but maybe one is checked out in a passive way. One is checked out in an active way where they're trying to be in denial and trying to fight things. But either way, they're kind of checked out. They probably are tired of a lot of things in a relationship. And so because of this environment, you tend to do a lot of toxic behaviors, often unknowingly to each other, back and forth. But what we're saying here is that when you do see those toxic behaviors, a lot of people see those as a negative thing, as an inconvenience, as a thing to stop, right? But what we're saying here is, no, it's a good thing that you discovered that. And before I let you guys speak here, it's kind of an example because we're thinking about we're finally getting married. I think our career is good now, and we're trying to have kids too. And I think one of the things we're learning is, and we see this with so many parents too, and we see this in relationships too, where whenever Elsha tells you, I'm unhappy, instantly in our mind, we want that to not be the case. We want to reject it. We're like, let me tell you why you shouldn't be unhappy. Let me tell you all these great things about the relationship. You being unhappy doesn't make any sense. So we try to deny that. And we see that as an inconvenience. But what people don't understand is that when you tell someone, hey, here's the reasons why you can be happy. Here's why you being unhappy doesn't make sense. You try to use all those logical arguments. It doesn't actually make your partner any happier. Like, your partner is still going to be unhappy. They're still going to have all these problems stored in their heads. But the only thing that changes now is that they won't tell you about it. It's almost like with kids. They do something bad, let's say, and you punish them. Well, they're still going to do those bad things. They're still going to want to go to that concert or whatever it is, right? But the only thing that changes now is that they won't tell you about it, because now they know if they tell you about it, something bad will happen. They won't understand you. So tell me your change in thinking and how you're starting to see tough truths, resistances now a bit differently. And Elsha, for you too. And because I'm sure you knew this before too, right?
Well,
I'm just
no, that's okay. Thank you. It's crazy. First of all, I want to say congratulations on getting married. My gosh, that's huge. You just said that casually. I'm like,
no, we're
that's
like
awesome.
We're like in the throes of wedding planning right now, and it's we have to have 2 weddings because we have a family. Her side is in California, so we have to go there, and then we have to have another one in Indonesia. Planning 2 weddings is not fun, especially a destination wedding. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
And then we're building a house on top of that right now, the same time. And yeah.
That is so much. That's so exciting though.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay. So the question was basically, how do you help me out if this is way off? How do you manage like those the issues that come up?
When you do come up, when it did come up before, you were in denial about it. Now you're very accepting, but there has to be some major paradigm shifts that happen in the meantime for you to just see it so differently like that. That's a very different way of seeing it, right?
Yeah, it's huge. Practice, honestly, non-stop practice every day, every opportunity, not only with Elsha, but with everybody at work. You know, like you talked about the hedge that I did at the beginning. Correct me if I'm wrong. Rub my face in the dirt if I'm way off on this. Like with clients, I'll say that. With my coworkers, with family members, everyone. So like that's one example of practicing it. And it's just anytime my brain is like default to defensiveness, default. I'm like, nope, override, gratitude, override. And so it's just this, and eventually I'm chipping away at that iceberg, like you talk about with the hair dryer.
Yeah.
Oh, and eventually that iceberg starts to get slower, and it's so hard at first.
It's hard because you've been so programmed a certain way, and you kind of go through like withdrawals too, because thinking about resistances and tough truths and being in denial of it. When you're in denial, when you get defensive, that is a defense mechanism. That is not the healthiest, but it does make you feel good. So it's almost like any addiction, right? Smoking it's not good for you, but it feels good in the short term. We always talk about that, right? It's like any bad habits you can think of gives you short-term benefits, but bad long-term results. While any good habits you have, it's instantly crappy in the beginning, but it's longer-term results. So we're always going to be trending towards bad habits if you look at that, because it rewards you immediately, bad habits, always. And so just to summarize here, I think the first thing is for people who are listening, just really meditate on how good it is when you get resistance, because whatever resistance you're getting, your partner or your kid, your colleague, your boss, whatever, has been thinking about that for a while. That thought exists no matter if you know it or not. And when your partner tells you about those things, finally, that's not a new information. That's not like, oh, now it's a reality because my partner told me that. No, it's been a reality for your partner for a long time. So if you're suppressing, if you're getting angry, if you're seeing that as an inconvenience, then you're kind of missing the point. Because the point is that now you know about it, right? And now that you know about it, you are now empowered to do something about it. Well, if you keep punishing that, you're actually putting yourself in a more powerless position. You feel powerful because you're putting your foot down, you're punishing other people, but you're actually more powerless because now that person's going to keep feeling the same things, but now you won't know about it. You're going to continue to be more and more oblivious, and which I think led to your obliviousness in the beginning of like, oh, there's no problems, right? Because she wasn't telling you everything, I guess. So think about that first, right? How knowing the tough truths is actually very empowering, and then drill it into your mind. Know that your mind will always want to go towards bad habits, bad thoughts, bad paradigms, because it's convenient, it's easy, it rewards you immediately. But we have to kind of fight human nature in a way to do that. And that's, I think, what differentiates the successful versus the kind of the failures. And there's a quote that says, like, you know, people who are successful are willing to do what the 99% would not do, so they can live the life the 99% cannot live, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. But I do also want to talk about this notion of Elsha talking to other people and fantasizing about other relationships a little bit, because I think this is a topic that's very confusing, I think, for a lot of people, right? Their partner has an affair or has fantasies about having an affair. And we have this thinking in our society that, oh, if you want to have an affair, if you just want it, something is wrong with you, and I should leave the relationship. We should break up because that's totally wrong. For me, the point that changed my life completely was when my partner told me in the beginning, Jeff, yeah, I want to see other people. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore because you asking me to be in this relationship and spending my one and only life with you is a very big ask. That's an insane ask. I have one consciousness ever. And I have to spend it with someone who thinks they're so perfect, who's obviously not perfect, makes me miserable. And I can't talk about how miserable I am. Obviously, we can't do anything about it. And somehow, if I'm unhappy in that relationship, somehow it's my fault. And then that woke me up and I went, you're right. I did not play my part as well. So now her wanting to have an affair was initially this black and white thing in my head. It's like, that's totally wrong. That's your fault. But now it's like, oh, wait, what was my part in this? And I think, Elsha, when you feel that guilt of having these fantasies, I'm sure you felt that guilt a lot. What was your thinking? Because that must be like a very conflicting point where your feelings bring you one way. You want to get out, and you have this strong desire to get out, but morally, with society's expectations, you're not supposed to do that as well. Was there that tug of war?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was, well, because I was married. I am married. And I was thinking about a different guy, and I knew that wasn't right, obviously. But I kept going back to like that fantasy in my head because I wasn't happy. And how was I going with this? Where I was going?
No, it's okay. It's okay. I guess just to repeat, there must have been that turmoil, because I know my partner felt the same thing too, where like every part of her being was telling her, I gotta get out of here. I have to get out of here. But at the same time, you look at getting out of here as like a hopeful thing, but then you are ridden with this guilt of the fact that, why am I like this? Why are these thoughts in my head? Why are these desires there, etc.?
Yeah, well, I mean, it first started because, I mean, I don't like putting it all on Lawrence because I feel like it's not all him that has to change. But it was just, he changed to where like he wasn't happy or nice, like enjoyable to be around for me. And so that's when I was like, I'm not enjoying myself in this relationship. So like, where can I go to feel happy? Like, even though I am married, so I have to stay, but I still want to be happy. So like in my mind, that's what I do. And obviously I'd feel guilty about doing that. But, and then doing it for so long, for 6 years. And then like in between those years, I would tell him like, I'm not happy. The only thing, I was open and honest about everything except the fact that I was thinking about a different guy. And I think that like, honestly, I'm really grateful for like seeing him. I also like talked to him about it too.
The other guy.
And it just kind of made it real, like more real for me, in the sense that I need to fix my life right now, like our marriage. Like I have to stop doing the little tiny steps that aren't working, and either get therapy or I don't know.
I honestly don't blame you for feeling that way, because anytime she did bring up how unhappy she was, like we would just go on a trip, but nothing would change.
And then I get
like,
pregnant.
yeah.
And then she'd get pregnant, and it's like, so yeah, and so it's like, we'd have a kid, and for her it was like the hole just got deeper. It just became that much harder to find a way out of this unhappy relationship. And yes, you know, she was doing everything she could to make it right by being honest with me and forthright in how she was feeling, but I wasn't making any changes for 7 years, and that catch-22 is exhausting.
Yeah,
it's debilitating. And like when it finally clicked for me, I was like, my gosh, I would feel the same way.
Was there a time when you found out and you were upset, or did this understanding come pretty quickly for you, Lawrence?
No, okay, so she told me in October, like the beginning of October of 2021. And like about the other guy, and it all just came crashing in on me. I'm like, oh man, this just became so real. She's gonna leave me. She doesn't love me. The only reason she's here is for our kids. And I was a wreck. And I was so victimized. Like I was victimizing myself so much. Like all I ever did was provided for you. And like I'm so like buff. I don't understand why you don't love me. And, like, it was so sad. Seriously, talking about it, it's embarrassing to even think about it. But once I took your program, and you know, in the program, you're like, if you can't get to a point where you can honestly say, if I were in your position, I would do the same thing, then you're not in a good headspace.
Yeah.
And honestly, stuff, moments like that, I was like, pause, reflect.
Yeah.
And it was in the reflection of all of these past experiences where I'm like, wow, how did I not see this? I was in so much denial.
I think, I think I can mirror that too, because going back to the story of what was the big epiphany moment for me that actually led to a lot of the program, right? So I was playing victim too, and I was blaming my partner for wanting to see other people. And I told her, like, you're non-committal. I'm going to find someone else who's actually committed to me, who actually wants to give a shit about the relationship, who actually cares. All these things, I was villainizing her for wanting to get out, right? Then when she told me that, like, dude, I have one life. I want to spend it. I don't want to spend it with you, given all these things. And then I woke up and I thought to myself, okay, who's really the victim here, right? Here's my partner who's been with me for 3 years at that point in time. And she's a young woman, attractive, wealthy, She can get anybody she wants. She can do whatever she wants. And then here she is so unhappy. She's stuck. All her family, me, is villainizing her for wanting to get out. And she can't talk about her problems with anybody else because it's wrong, obviously, to want to fantasize about being with someone else. So from my side, right, everyone was agreeing with me. It's like, oh, you should leave this person because they're not committed. And I could talk about it with anybody else, but she couldn't talk about it with anybody else. She couldn't express anything. And then I was telling her, okay, I don't care how unhappy you feel. I don't care how miserable you are. You got to stay here. I mean, that's North Korea stuff, right? That's like, you got to stay in this. Who's the real victim here? Who's the real one who's suffering? And that woke me up. And that got me out of my victim mindset to go, okay, this is not as black and white as I thought. I need to see this as in a more mature way. And that was the moment when I said to myself, I think I'm at a point where if I were you, I would have done felt exactly the same as you right now. And that was massive for me. And I think that's what you're referring to as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So guys, just to take away from that point is, be careful about how you judge your partner, right? Things are not always that black and white. And I think sometimes when we get out of our own ego and we see things from both sides and we really see we transport ourselves to other people and really build a context of what other people go through. And I actually want to spend a bit of time on that of context versus circumstance, right? A lot of people, I think, look at the circumstance of someone wanting an affair and they look at that and they label it, but they don't understand the full context. And a good example of this is when you remember that time when Will Smith punched Chris Rock? You remember that, right?
Every day I think about it.
So that was a circumstance. And I think people looked at that and they made a lot of judgments about that already. But I challenge people, just dive deeper into the context, into the full history of their life, of Will Smith's life, his wife's life, Chris Rock, their relationship together. And I think you'll find that you start to understand that a bit better about why that happened. And I think if you transpose this to any point in life, there's so many moments in life where I look at a circumstance, I made judgments, and I realized, oh, I was so wrong there once I understand the full context. And I'm sure many of you listening to this can relate to the same. And I think all we're asking is just you do the same. You look at your partner wanting to leave, wanting a divorce, doing all these things that you don't like, whatever it is. Transport yourself there, see the full context, the historical context, and ask yourself and get to the point where you can say, if I were you, I would have done felt exactly the same. I think that'll be a very humbling experience for you. And I think you can see things objectively better. But I want to kind of jump off to the next point here, which is how I think there's also a very common paradigm in relationships that says you can't change people. Obviously, Lawrence, you went through a massive change yourself. And Elsha, I think you went through a massive change yourself in the way you show up in the relationship, in the way you commit yourself to the relationship, because at one point you were done, but now I think you're not done anymore. And I think, you're doing a lot of things now that would be very difficult for you to do back then. So what I always say is, yeah, you can't change people directly, but what you can do and what's in your control is you can change the culture, the environment to where that naturally leads to a change in behavior as well. Because we know that environment has a very big impact on behavior. We know this, right? You have the Stanford prison experiment, which says you take normal people who are great people in society and you put them in this environment and they become kind of a-holes a little bit. So I guess let me do something fun here. Lawrence, tell Elsha, what are the changes in her behavior?
Ooh, interesting. It can't all be about sex. I was gonna say. No, I've noticed that. I mean, you're so much happier just generally, and I'm sure it's my perspective, honestly, but it feels like, I know you say that you were honest in the past, I feel like you're even more honest and like willing to speak your mind on everything, whereas as before it was like I don't know, and I might be misinterpreting this, but it felt like before it was like I don't want to bring up this thing because I know how he'll react, and it's just not worth the conversation, and now it's like I'll tell him this because I feel like he can take it, and I think that is a big thing that's changed, and it's really nice.
Yeah. Elsha, same thing for you.
Well, a lot has to do with like talking to each other and communicating, which before I thought we were pretty good at communicating. But like now knowing where we're at, it's so much better.
Yeah.
You don't get offended by like, not that I talk mean to you.
You always have to justify it.
But it's more enjoyable to be around you.
Well, even when you would say things, like I said earlier, like even when you say things as a joke, I would get offended. You didn't even say it like to try and, it wasn't even a correction, or it wasn't even like mean. It's never mean.
No, but it's also,
I just couldn't take it.
Yeah, I just couldn't take it.
Gosh.
Just couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
But it's also, before there was just kind of like a negative feel about you, and like you would always be talking bad about other people.
Yeah.
And me, it's like I don't want that feeling of just negativity all the time. And so that was also a big thing, but you kind of turn that around.
It was the environment, right?
Yeah, the environment.
Yeah, like you were saying, I would be like, man, that Geoffrey guy. Ugh.
Yeah. I want to talk about sex, Jeff. Tell me.
Yeah, come on. Get to the good stuff.
And I think that's a really good wrap up for that point, because like you heard me, Lauren, say in the beginning, like it doesn't always take two to tango, right? You can do this yourself. You can make some massive changes by yourself here. And this is not to downplay your role here, Elsha, at all, right? Because like what we're basically saying here is, if you look at a lot of very toxic behaviors in any relationship, whether that's stonewalling, gaslighting, whether that's toxic masculinity, I don't care what it is. That's usually a result of a defense mechanism. It's an act of self-preservation, really. It's that you feel threatened in your identity, which is why you shut down, which is why you are in denial, you lie, you pin the blame on other people because you can't confront that on your own. You have that self-preservation need. And self-preservation goes hand in hand with safety. You have less safety, the more you self-preserve. And the safety that you don't feel may not always be from the relationship. It's not always like, oh, because Elsha did a lot of things mean to me, that's why I don't feel safe, and that's why I lie, right, Lawrence? It could be like from life, it could be from society, how you grew up, parents, whatever. But there's a lack of safety that leads to the self-preservation. But the interesting part is like once you create safety, then there's really no need to self-preserve. There's really no need to shut down. There's really no need to gaslight and pin the blame on someone else. There's really no need to lie, no need to do all these things that you did before, because there's no need to self-preserve anymore. And so what we're saying here is, again, we're not trying to change people. When we say two to tango, we're not trying to say like, hey, Lawrence, you make Elsha do this. Elsha, you make Lawrence do this. It's really that let's change the environment together. Let's start with one person if needed, to where we create safety, to where this need to self-preserve doesn't show up anymore. And I think a lot of people, just like you, are going to be very surprised at how much people's behavior can change when you change that environment. And that's all we're saying. So changing people is not within your control, but changing environments is always within your control, which is why we say it doesn't always take you to tango. You can start the cycle. You can start the feedback loop. So people who are listening to this and who are confused about what it means when we say it doesn't take two to tango, that's what we mean, right? It starts with you. But if you are someone right now who are tethered, so if your partner gets angry, you get angry too, right? You cannot deal with resistances, then you can't change the environment. You're just perpetuating the same environment. And so just think about that for a bit, right? You need to have a very radically different way of thinking for you to change the environment here. And last thing, I guess, Lawrence, your favorite topic, the sex. How? So I think the first thing I want to talk about here is, whenever couples have sexual issues, it's never rarely about the sex itself. It's usually that there's, because like, and Elsha, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm not a woman. I think the act of sex for a woman is very much an act of surrender, meaning that you're really just giving yourself to another person, and you have to kind of let your guard down a bit, right? You have to kind of let go. And it's that feeling of like, not to quote all movies, like, take me, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you have a lot of safety issues, if you have a lot of all these issues with the relationship, that safety issues, it makes it hard for you to just surrender like that. You're always like holding on to something, you're guarding yourself, and it makes you not be able to open up, which makes it less enjoyable for Lawrence. And then if it's not enjoyable for either of you, it becomes more like a chore. It becomes more like a chore. You want to do it less and less and less. And that makes both of you more upset again. And it's just a vicious cycle all the way. I mean, let's hear it from both your point of views here in the beginning. I guess, Elsha, let me start with you. What do you think led to the decline of your sexual relationship at that point in time?
I think the fact that we were both virgins and we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. And I didn't go to anybody to talk to. He didn't either, because we were like, oh, in the movies, it's just so natural. And
yeah.
But that's not the case. And it took so for guys, obviously, it's so fast. And for girls, it takes so much longer. And we didn't realize that. And he would kind of get frustrated that I wasn't going. And it would kind of make I don't know, I have no idea what I'm broken, I guess. That's what I thought. And it just came it's not enjoyable for me. I don't want to do it. And this is not even a year of marriage. And it was every time he would want to, I'm like, no, I just don't want to. It's not fun for me. We can just hurry up and do it just to get over with.
Yeah, this is really for
this
me.
Is all for you.
This is for you. This is a totally selfless act for me. I'm a martyr here.
Stop bugging me.
But it's interesting you say that, because I think the first thing people would do at that point in time is they would start reading Kama Sutra. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just one second.
No worries.
Change the show. Hang on.
So we'll just cut this part out.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. I get it. I have to be ready for that, because once I have a baby, it's probably gonna be a mess too.
Yeah, dude, I was thinking about what you said earlier about the kids going to concerts just not telling you. You would not believe how many dirty underwear I have found hidden in our house, because we'd get mad at my son for wetting himself, and so he'd just start hiding it instead. It's
yeah.
Yeah, we dug this hole. He's just filling it up with diapers. That makes sense.
It's funny, right? Yeah, because Samantha has a 7-year-old brother. I know she's 27 right now. She has a 7-year-old brother. He talks to us about all his drama, right? And he talks about this stuff, and he's like, yeah, I want to tell my dad about this. I'm just going to do it in secret. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm going to tell you about it. But anyway, but I think going back to the story of the sexual issue and how you guys were pretty inexperienced in the beginning, I think it's interesting, because I think a lot of people hearing this would say, okay, well, maybe we should read some Kama Sutra books or something like that. Maybe we should learn about sex and how to pleasure each other better. But we come to another problem again, which is that, is there safety to actually talk about it? Because talking about sex is very embarrassing. It's very raw. It's the question that I hated most back then was tell me your fantasies, Jeff. It's man, you don't want to know. I don't feel good telling you this right now, right? So a lot of people can learn all these things, but then if you don't have the safety again, you can't even bring up the question. You can't even get an honest answer out of your partner to really talk about, okay, what do you actually want? What it feels good? What doesn't feel good? So it doesn't really matter anyway. And so when, you said to Lawrence, like, this is not enjoyable for me. And then Lawrence went, what do you mean? I mean, if that's a reaction, I'm not going to talk about stuff with you anymore, like, forget it.
Well, like, along that too, because like, I mean, girls talk. We don't care about it. Because like, we want to know too. But like, I would talk about it, try to figure out like with other people, and I would like tell Lawrence about it, and he would get so upset, like offended and embarrassed that like other people know that like it's not pleasurable for me.
Yeah.
But like, and he got kind of upset one time, like, "Hey, I'm not gonna tell you about it anymore." But
yeah, she I remember she came to me and she's like, yeah, so I was talking to my friends about sex and about like what you could do, to make it more pleasurable for me. I'm like, whoa, you talked to somebody about it? I went in straight panic mode. And it just goes back to that, toxic masculinity of like, I'm putting it all on me, and now everyone knows that like I'm flawed and I can't handle that. And so, yeah, there was that safety, right? Where she couldn't come to me anymore.
It always starts there. So, I'm sure people listening to this, a lot of you are going through like problems with intimacy, stuff like that. Just realize that with your problems with intimacy, rarely is it about the intimacy itself. It's always something deeper than that. So look deeper too. Just look deeper too. But I guess my next question is, what changed? What led to the change in the sexual life now? Has it?
Well, one thing that helped is that just generally I got better at,
we knew what foreplay was.
We knew
what that was before.
that helped. But even after it was like a guaranteed orgasm every time, it was still, this is before the program, it was still like, I don't want to still. And I'm like, why not? Don't you, isn't it nice? And she's like, yeah, like it feels good. I just don't want to. And I was like, so confused, right? So like you said, the thing up here wasn't really the thing. The thing up here was great. It was like every time we were both climaxing, and it was always great. But the thing under the thing was the safety. It was that safety. And so it wasn't until, she felt comfortable to come to me saying, I'm having these fantasies and like, I just am not happy. And it wasn't until I changed. I'm taking too much credit. It wasn't until the environment was changed, right? You know what I mean? It wasn't until the environment was changed that there was a true deep comfort.
I see. Interesting. Yeah. So was it that, so you said like, I mean, definitely both of you were going to orgasm, stuff like that, which is like good by the book. Yeah. But then I think what I hear you saying is what was missing was there's still, I think, that discomfort with not being able to just be present in the moment, always thinking about, like, I think tensing up is really what it is. It's like there's that tension still, right? Still there. And then once that tension kind of goes away with the creation of safety, then that's when you really get to just live and experience in the moment, which makes sex more enjoyable as well for both of you. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, it was, we started to like that feeling that sex was a chore was so strong for both of us. Where like, people will tell us like, you have to have foreplay, you have to do all these things, and this is how you pleasure a woman, all these things. There's so many rituals, there's so many steps, and like, At that point, I was thinking like, man, this is like 10 o'clock at night. I'm exhausted. We're trying to build a business here. I don't want to do this. So even the thought of like sex sometimes is just like, oh my God, what a chore, you know? And it got to the point when we have built enough safety when we finally talked to each other and we said, okay, what is the real problem here? You know, we both find each other attractive, whatever it is, but the real problem is I think we both see this as work. And we both opened up about the fact that, yeah, I was masturbating and you were too. And I think what we loved about masturbating was the fact that there's no work. It was just easy. I can do it anytime. I don't have to think about other people besides myself, really. I can do things very selfishly. It's very easy. And so we actually started just mutually masturbating for a bit and just making sex very easy, very simple. Just no work, nothing to work up to. It's just like, just do it. Let's forget about what it should be, what was right, wrong, Kama Sutra stuff, forget it, and let's just do that. But that can only happen with the safety. Then eventually we start to associate sex in a very different way. And that took months, I think close to a year. And now we're back to where we actually enjoy it again. We actually want to do foreplay and want to do all this work because I think we associate it very differently now. I think that was what changed for us. So I guess, you know, just a summary here, guys, is we talk about this notion of systems thinking in our program, right? How the problem is never really about the problem. Like I was working, the example I gave in the program is I was working in a restaurant because I wanted to be a chef when I was a kid. And the chef told me like, hey, if your guests are complaining about your food, don't just learn how to cook better, right? You maybe need to understand how to serve the food better. You maybe need to understand where you source your food better. You need to understand how the food is being delivered. You need to understand what the cows are eating. If you were making beef, you need to understand the full system and pinpoint the root of it. And what we're saying here, the root of it is not always just a sexual issue. It's usually the safety issue. It's usually something much deeper. And usually it's not even the safety issues. Usually it's something deeper than that, where you do have some internal issues, internal insecurities, not being able to be bulletproof, still tethered, and all these paradigm shifts that you haven't made, that, which is why you can't even create safety. So it goes so far down, right? And you need to understand this full system. And so I guess I'll close off here with just your experience in the program, Lawrence, I guess. So my first question is like, did you tell Elsha about the program when you joined?
Yeah, I did.
Instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your reaction, Elsha?
I was actually glad he found something because I knew that he didn't like the couples therapy. Really working for him, so he was trying to find something out there that was kind of more talking to him.
Yeah, I know the problem with a lot of people is like the coaching industry has sort of gone like a black sheep reputation, right? Where it's just a bunch of people who don't really know what they're talking about, scamming people, charging a bunch of money for not much, really. Did you feel that, Elsha, when he told you, oh, I joined a program?
Not really, because he showed me I think he showed me some of your videos before he did it, right? Or can you not see the videos before you get the program?
Oh no, he's got a lot of videos.
Yeah, so like he showed me stuff and he's like, this is like exactly what, like he's explaining like your situation like on point, and then he's like talking about stuff that like I could do and like just blah blah blah. But I was like, yeah, that's great. Like whatever like works for you, I think you should do that.
Got it.
Like a lot of people work differently than other people, and other things will help them better.
And Lawrence, what made you trust me at that point in time?
Wow. Well, I was in desperation mode for like a full 30 days. You know, of just like panicked. I'm gonna lose her. I have to find something, anything to fix this. And I found a lot of garbage out there. I mean, I remember specifically watching a TED talk about, and this lady was like, yeah, you know, you guys need to just have an open relationship and just have sex with everybody. And I'm like, what? You know, I found a lot of stuff.
You show
And,
Elsha, it's like, is this right? Is this what you want?
is that how you feel? Is this it? She's like, no. But yeah, like I came across one of your videos and I'm like, oh, 23 minutes. This is a good bite. Watch the whole thing and I'm like, wow, that was so much. And like it was like every 30 seconds I was like, yeah, yeah, like that makes so much sense. And for me, I feel like outside of that moment in our relationship when I just could not accept the truth, generally, like when I hear true words being spoken, it resonates with me, you know, which is, and so like when I was watching these videos, I'm like, this is like actual truth. And so the more I looked into it, like I looked through the comments, I joined the free Facebook group and like all of these things. And I was like, when I got on a video call with you guys to after the what is it called? The free webinar
The webinar
consultation.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, after that I got on a video with you guys and I was like, sell me. Tell me that I need to buy it because I'm willing, you know what I mean? And I remember the guy was like, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so my experience joining the program was nothing but positive. And for me personally, I saw immediate results and it was really cool.
Sure, I guess yeah, going from your side, like what was it like observing that?
It was great. There was, I mean, I could really see the change, like for the better. Not like his whole personality is changing, because that's not what I'd want. But there was, what was I gonna say? There was what's it? Oh, it was he loved, like, one thing that I knew that this program was great for him was like he would show me some clips, like he's being like so like blunt and straightforward and sometimes mean, and it was just like it just hit me so much harder. Like that's what I needed. I was like,
Got
all
it.
right.
Yeah, got it. So it just like him showing the videos and realizing, oh, it's not even him fixing himself yet, but it was the fact that this guy is now aware of what he's done. I think that's massive. It's not like that. Again, it's not the perfect product, but the perfect process in a way. And the fact that he's aware is a start of something. And I think that's what you're referring to, Elsha.
Yeah. And I think also it's just knowing that it's not just us. Like there's tons of couples that have a lot of similarities in like issues in their marriage.
Yeah. And I think that's also what I try to remind people of too, is, you know, a lot of people, they obviously come to me because they're in a very dire state. They wait till like the very worst moment, just like you, Lawrence. And time is such a big factor for them. Like, I need to do this fast. I need to do something fast. And I think I want to put you on the spot a bit here, Lawrence, because that was a struggle you had in the beginning. You want to make things happen fast. And you kind of talked to me too about how you wanted to say things to Elsha. You wanted to do things to get the results now. But what ended up happening is that you became very controlling and you gave Elsha a lot of pressure to see who you are, your changes. And I think the ironic part is that when you pressure someone to see your changes, that shows that you haven't really changed. The funny part, right? Elsha, did you feel that at all when Lawrence was taking the program, or maybe Lawrence was making this up in his own mind? I guess, did you feel that pressure to do something, to react, to respond, to come closer, etc.?
Like a tiny bit. Most of the part, it was just I'm just kind of done faking it.
Yeah.
And like if I didn't want to be like laugh at his jokes, I wouldn't. or yeah, it's just kind of like that. But I think he was just more like hopeful in a way. Like I don't feel like he was had too much pressure on me. I think he had too much pressure on himself, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably that. And I think the pressure too is like, he's something people need to understand, right? Whoever is listening, your partner is not wanting you to be perfect. They know that's not possible. They don't believe you anyway. So like, even in 3 months, you do this program or whatever program and you say, I'm perfect. Nobody's going to believe you anyway. Right. In fact, it's going to make you look like a bit foolish. But what they're looking for is, do you have the process to be on a trajectory of actually getting there? Right. And I think when they see that trajectory, that's all they need. Right. And that doesn't take a long time to prove, really. And you don't prove that by telling them stuff. You prove that by showing them stuff. So you can't fake any of this stuff, right? Because Elsha, you can see right through whenever Lawrence was trying to like say something differently, but it's like, oh, it doesn't sound like you. Or you probably think like, oh, okay, we'll see how that pans out, I guess. So no matter how dire your situation is, guys, it's always that there's no shortcuts. You can't fake any of this stuff. You can't jump hoops. You can't skip hoops. You have to make your changes actually very genuine, and stop trying to find the perfect words to say. There's nothing you can say. You've probably said everything under the sun. You probably like used all the words in a dictionary, concocted these words in many different ways to tell your partner why you will change, why she should stay. She's never going to believe you in any of that. Just show the changes, be consistent. And that's the only thing that can happen. That's the only thing that will work. And whenever you feel this urgency to do something right away, just know that that urgency is what got you to where you are in the first place. Is what got you in this crappy situation in the first place. And you can't solve your problem with the same thinking you used to create it. So it may be scary for people to untether, see the big picture, slow down, but you have to. You got no choice. That's the only choice you got. All right. I guess I want to see if there's anything else we missed, but I think we covered a lot in this one conversation.
I'd say so.
I think so.
It was really good, honestly.
Yeah. So I guess
it's like you've done it before.
I guess last minute advice. I know we talked about a lot already. We gave a lot of advice and kind of like perspectives, but you mentioned earlier that there's a lot of couples who are kind of going through the same things. And Elsha, let me start with you. What, I don't know if you're thinking about a certain couple in mind, one of your friends, or I don't know, some generic thing, but what would be the one piece of advice you would give someone who's struggling in a relationship, who's on the last legs, etc.?
Good question. I think a big one for me was just find someone that you can talk about all of it. Like if it's not your spouse, don't do your spouse. Find someone that's also knowledgeable, like you or therapist or someone that you can just lay it all out, because you're just holding it in and it's just building and building and building, and it's not going to help. It will make it just so much worse. But also I feel like also be understanding for your spouse or partner as well, because for me, like in a way I understood why a little bit, like why he was acting the way he was, and it wasn't all like he's the bad guy, like it's all his fault. I think it's two ways, so you have to work on it yourself and you have to work on it together instead of just calling it quits.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that was really, that resonated with me a lot, because it was a moment when we stopped blaming each other and arguing about whose fault things were, that we looked within and say like, okay, who cares whose fault it is? Let's just do something about it. That was when things started to get better. So stop playing victim. Who cares about blame gaming and stuff like that? And I think the other thing you said that really resonated too was how sometimes we are so quick to judge someone's character, right? It's like we always say in the program, like, you don't know if something is good or bad. You don't know if an action is good or bad until you understand the intentions. Someone can give $1 million to charity because they did it out of a good intention or a really bad intention. I don't know, right? But if you look at the behavior itself, you're like, oh, wow, he gave $1 million to charity. How amazing. You can't say that's amazing. He could be doing it to escape paying taxes or whatever. I don't know what it is, right? Who knows? But I think sometimes when we understand the intentions that someone has about why they do the things they do, and not just pin them as a villain like that, you get to really start to understand them. And in fact, when you start to paint people as a villain like that, it makes that into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because imagine if you keep saying to your partner, like, you're such a bad person, I don't like you. How can you expect them to be a good person after all that? You know what I mean? Like, it's not very encouraging. So yeah, thanks. Lawrence, last minute advice.
Yeah. Before I say my thoughts, I did also want to comment on what you said. Or add to what you said. I think that a big thing that you did that helped me was, even when you were totally like hopeless for the relationship, was that you were just so honest all the time, like, and forthcoming with it. And so that helped me know how to improve. So that was huge. So like, you say it takes one to tango, right? So if for anyone who's listening, if you're in the situation where you're like, it's time for me to take the relationship into my own hands and fix the environment and fix myself, because that's the only thing that I can do, right? Well, that's a great start. And while you're fixing yourself and while you're building what you call, Geoffrey, in the program, your bulletproof vest, ask your spouse or your partner to be open and honest. And because otherwise you're not going to know, if things are better. Be willing to have those hard conversations. And again, going back to it, be grateful for those hard conversations.
Yeah. But I think what people need to understand too is that these hard conversations or these hard truths, they're not going to come to you on a silver platter like that, right? They're not going to come in a way that most people think. A lot of people say like people think, for example, oh, Elsha was telling me about how unhappy she was. They're picturing her saying this in like a very nice way. It's like, oh, Lawrence, this is what you need to do. This is what makes me unhappy. That's not what's happening, right? Sometimes it's very hard to hear. Sometimes it's in a form that will make most men go, you know what, screw this too. I don't want to deal with this right now, right? So sometimes like I get some comments from people. It's like, Jeff, I get no one's situation is unique, and I get that, resistance is a good thing, but she said this to me or she said that to me. It's like, you don't get the point. The point is that she told you that, and now she wants you to do something about it. The fact that you are crumbling and you are getting upset over something that she told you shows her that you're not ready to hear the truth. And if you're not ready to hear the truth, you're not ready to do the work. If you can't do the work, forget it. Yeah. So the harsher the truth, the more you should lean into it, the more you should thrive through it, the more you should smile and go like, crap, she just told me something that's really hard to say, that's really hard to tell me. Thanks.
Yeah. It's true. And no one should be apologetic about that. She shouldn't be apologetic about sharing that with you. And for me as well, and this is kind of counterintuitive, and that's why I think it's important, is that I decided to stop saying sorry for stuff, because it got to a point where if she hears, oh, I'm sorry about that, I'll be better, I promise I'll do better, it's like, oh, great, so that's another broken promise already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the biggest advice and change is be grateful, and stop saying sorry. Just do it.
Yeah. I think like I want to make sure that doesn't get misunderstood. Yes, right? Because I think a lot of men do need to say sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yes. But I think what you're trying to say here is that you need to know what you're sorry about. You need to actually understand what you're sorry about. And often when you understand what you're sorry about, you don't need to say the word sorry. The word sorry doesn't need to be in the vocabulary. So I can say I'm sorry, for example, when my partner tells me about something that I did, and I can go, you know what, Sam, you're right. That was hurtful. And I realized if I put myself in your shoes, that was very, very painful for you to hear. And that was a bad move for me. Sorry didn't even come up in the sentence once, but it's very obvious what I'm sorry about. It's very obvious that I understand what I'm sorry about, right? I think that's what you're trying to say, right?
Oh, thank you for saying that, because yes, looking back, that's a really bad message. But, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you've said sorry so many times that
it becomes empty.
Yes, it's created a confirmation bias that whenever you say sorry, you don't really mean sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the other thing that you're saying too is like, don't be the boy who cries wolf. When you say something, when you actually say you understand, when you say you're going to do better, don't just be a toxic masculine and go like, I'm going to be better. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Actually figure out how. And actually, if you don't know how, say you don't know how yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
So those are two of the really big ones. I guess so. Yeah, be grateful and show that you understand. Say sorry if you need to say sorry. And I guess the last one for me is just being completely honest and open, even and especially when it's you think that it's going to be a hard truth for that person to hear. Or if it's a hard truth just for you to say, like, because I had so many issues with toxic masculinity where it was hard for me to admit that I was wrong, you know? And so being honest about it it just breaks down that barrier that I've built up between us so fast.
Yeah. I think the problem, and we'll end with this because I don't want to keep you guys for too long, is that people will take that also and say, okay, I need to be honest. Well, let me tell my partner about how unhappy I feel after they told him that she was unhappy first. It's just,
that perpetuates.
Yeah, that's a perpetuates problem. I think what's the healthier thing to do is also fix your internal mindset first, change the way you see your relationship. So for example, like whatever you're going through, don't be honest from a place where you're just thinking about things in the wrong way. Like if you're judging your partner's character in the wrong ways, for example, and you have seen this situation in a completely different light, in a wrong light, in a negative light that's not necessary, fix that first before you're honest, right? Be honest with yourself first. Look within and say, am I being honest about what is actually happening? Why we're struggling so much? Is this actually her fault or is this also partly my fault? Be honest with that first, fix inside first, then let's be honest outside, right? Because then if you're just honest about, it's almost like this notion of, just because you have an opinion doesn't mean it's right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things you feel right now, for a lot of people, just know that it may not be right.
Yeah. And that's why, like what Elsha was saying earlier, you have to talk to the right people.
Right people.
Because otherwise you're perpetuating bad mindsets.
Yeah.
So thank you for correcting those points.
No, but it's just a coaching habit of mine of like getting everything misunderstood, right? It's like a very common thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much. I know that was more of your time than expected.
Oh man.
Thank you for being so open to the whole conversation too. I hope that was fun for you. That was fun for me. So
yeah, it was good meeting you. Besides
likewise. Yes. As well. Yeah. So guys, have a great rest of the week. Lawrence and Elsha, I hope to see you in the program too. So yeah, let's keep doing this.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.